And we have some other football news, but the one that everybody's talking about is Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler fired. Lots of reports. There's one that's out there that apparently Josh McDaniels is a big Halloween guy. And actually had lunch with the owner, Mark Davis, and was even, part of the outfit was mocking sort of Mark Davis, and then Mark Davis had a fortune cookie for him, and the fortune cookie opened up, says you're fired. So lots of different crazy stuff. I like the idea that you fire Ziegler because that team it's a collection of some pieces you like and some that you don't. But if you're going to hire a new coach, you need to hire a new general manager. They were tied in at the hip. I don't think anybody would argue that it wasn't working. I also don't. I think if you're real about it, you go, they weren't actually all that close when he took over. Lots of people talk to, Rich Bisaccia. Like, remember, they had to hire a new GM. They had to hire a new regime. Also, what you don't know about the Raiders is their business side went through dramatic turnover the last 2 years where everybody essentially except one guy was fired. And it's very curious what happened there. But look, it's one of those deals where this is completely on brand for the Raiders. Completely on brand for the Raiders. The difference is Mark Davis he wasn't a football coach the way that Al Davis was a football coach, but Al Davis acted in a very irrational way at times in which he would fire guys midseason. He would make dramatic changes. Remember, Al Davis, whatever you want to see from the NFL films music about how legendary he was, he was the same guy that because of a personal reason, he basically ruined Marcus Allen's career and forced the coaches to not play him. It's a backup. This is the same Al Davis. Again, that's the dad who's passed away, Mark Davis' son. But it's the same Al Davis, same guy who used to game plan, write notes, but there was a phone line directly from his box to the sideline, and he would call down and tell them what he wanted them to do. And it's an owner's own sort of deal. What's that mean? He can do whatever he wants. So I don't think he's wrong for firing Josh McDaniels. It wasn't working. They weren't getting better. They were getting worse. It appears they made the wrong decision at quarterback. Here's the crazy part about it, right? The Niners let Jimmy Garoppolo walk. And among the reasons, and probably the biggest reason they let him walk, was Jimmy Garoppolo's always hurt, right? Here we are halfway through the season, his first season with the Raiders. And Jimmy Garoppolo has been hurt all but like one game. And it's easy to say, hey, it's not his fault. It's not. You get hit, you get concussed, you get mangled up because your offense line. But we have a pattern of half a decade of Jimmy Garoppolo's always hurt. The Raiders being surprised that Jimmy Garoppolo was always hurt is like someone signing with the Cubs and being surprised that they always have day games. You play a lot of day games here. I told you that Moises Alou story, right? Hey, a lot of my boy Boog Shambi sat down with him, had dinner with him one night. He's like, how do you like Chicago? Love it. Only thing is a lot of day games. Like, it's the Cubs. They play day games. That's like buying a Jaguar and be like, man, this thing's in the shop a lot. No, really? Buying a home in a crime-ridden area and going like, man, my car got broken into last night. Like, okay, do a little research. And then the other part of research is you didn't know that Patriot guys don't work out? And I think the question becomes, why? Why don't Patriot guys work out? The answer is Tom Brady, but it's different than you think. Because the reason that the Patriots have been great was not just because of Tom, although is a huge part of it. It's also the other element of Tom, which I'll get to in a second. And they're the best dumpster divers in the NFL. Right? Nobody does the waiver wire like the Patriots do the waiver wire. I mean, and slot wide receivers, you go Edelman to Welker to, was it Troy Brown? Like, you just kind of go through it. Rashae Caldwell, you find these guys that they're, with another team, they're okay. With your team, with your quarterback, they're unbelievable. And they coach them up, and they coach every game, and they can play a 3-4-1 game and a 4-3 the next, and they coach every game to win. But the number one factor is Tom Brady, but it's not just because of Brady's greatness. It's because, and we talked about this when he retired, you cannot underrate the value of having a great quarterback who does not demand the most money. Don't get me wrong, Tom Brady was very handsomely compensated. But he wasn't signing record-breaking deal after record-breaking deal, despite the fact that their level of success was directly related to his competency. People make a big deal when they go, hey, remember when Matt Castle was the starter for a year, they won 11 games. The problem with the argument that, hey, they can win 11 games with Matt Castle was they won 16 games the year before. That's 5-win difference with that level of talent. Randy Moss, that was the most talented team. That's a huge difference. It's not just that they lost a Hall of Fame quarterback and that the salary cap era and the push for more money all kind of coincided and they had to blow the thing up and start all over because they were badly over the cap. They had to try and replace arguably or maybe inarguably the most successful quarterback ever who also, unlike all these other guys, did not demand top dollar. You cannot possibly talk about the Patriots and their success with Tom Brady unless you also coincide the fact that whether it was Don Yee, whether it was Brady, whether it was his family and how he's raised or how Belichick convinced him of it, all of those things matter. And then, oh yeah, by the way, this is something that all of those coaches run into, right? They go to a new job and they act like Bill Belichick. We all do it. Anybody who you work for, who you respect. I mean, take Lincoln Riley, right? Lincoln Riley is from Texas. You listen to him speak and you think he speaks like Bob Stoops. Bob Stoops is from Ohio. Why do you do it? Because that's the guy who is your idol. That's the guy who you're around. That's the guy who you want to be like. Everybody does that. And so when you walk like him, when you talk like him, when you have a way with him, when you talk down to the media, when you don't let anybody in, when you do your own thing with personnel, when you think you know more than everybody else. But the problem with that, and I've heard from a bunch of different NFL people is, yeah, but you're seeing Bill Belichick now after he established himself. Bill Belichick was not this level of arrogant or confident or shut off from the rest of the world when he first took over the job. And this is a big part that's also not discussed, yes, Pete Carroll preceded him, but that was a team that was built by Bill Parcells. Everything was set in place by Parcells into how they did things. The owner, stay out of it. I got it. I don't need any help. This is how we do it. So that was the culture set in place. Carroll, it was fine. He didn't work. They bring back Belichick, and Belichick could be just like Bill Parcells because Bill Parcells had already wired it right. I think that the easiest analogy is, right, that I'll use the home TV, the home surround sound stereo system as the perfect thing. Most of these teams now are, if it's the home theater system, you don't have to worry about the wires showing, right? Because you're wireless, because you're digital, because you're streaming, right? You don't have to go into the walls for speakers anymore. You can have them kind of anywhere, right? You can have that front speaker jobby. But Belichick took over for essentially a Parcells set-up team that had the in-wall subwoofer, had the in-wall TV, had everything all dialed up. And then Pete Carroll came in and fumbled the remote a little bit and found a way to make it work for a couple years. And then Belichick came over and goes, no, this thing is fine. This is how we do. This is how I'm doing it. I sit down, I press the button. Every once in a while, you upgrade the remote, where now you can get multiple things, and maybe you're trying to add in a little bit of streaming. The rest of the world, they're wireless. The rest of the world doesn't have to do subwoofer, doesn't have to do all the different things you have. I mean, everybody remembers when you had your home stereo system put in the very first time. So now, Josh McDaniels, now Flores when he was in Miami. Like, Flores got fired in Miami, not because he's not a good football coach. Flores got fired in Miami because he was an a-hole who couldn't get along with people, who was impossible for offensive coordinators to work with. Right? He always thought he knew more than the personnel people, and the personnel people fired him. That's what happened. Right? What happened with Bill O'Brien, who actually had a lot of success early, but then he got autonomous control just like Bill Belichick. And what happened? He got arrogant. He made bad decisions based upon his ego. He thought he knew more. He thought he could play the waiver wire, and that thing didn't work. You know why? Because he didn't have Tom Brady making half the money that he should have been making. And Bill O'Brien, the GM, got Bill O'Brien, the head coach, fired, which is what could happen to Bill Belichick. Right? This thing, Gruden's thing, was wired by Gruden. He did the stereo. He did the TV. He did everything. And whether you liked it or not, whether it's a data philosophy or not, they were trending the right way. They were starting to figure it out. They're putting together the offensive line. And then he got fired, and Bisaccia came in and just kind of had the remote. And then you have Josh McDaniels like, we're going to do it the Patriot way. It's really hard to get that to work outside New England. Because you walk in like you're Bill Belichick in year 20, and you're really Josh McDaniels, who hasn't done bupkis as a head coach. No one knows the Patriot way. Does that make sense? I thought it made sense in my head when I was putting it together. I don't